Well, hey, everybody, we're live again. This is Joe McCarthy in MoJOE Studio with my longtime friend, longer than either one of us can really wrap our minds around, Robert Bradford,
Yeah.
who became a good friend back in college and has remained such to this day. Robert, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. Yeah, it's been a long time. I was starting to calculate, and I said, I don't want to know. I
Yeah,
think it's 35 years or something like that.
yeah. I see. I came to SCC, now Vanguard University, in the fall of '87, I think. And
Yeah,
I think you were there already. And
yeah,
then my senior year, which we both graduated '89, is that right?
yeah,
Yeah. So our senior year, we were both in this amazing little band of ragtag musicians called Prayer and
yeah.
Praise.
Right.
We led worship on campus every Wednesday night, student led, 4 students. Had some absolutely amazing time, both making music and connecting with God and doing something really meaningful and impactful. And that went so well, and we bonded as friends that for several years after that, as long as most of the band was in Southern California, we would do camps and hang out as often as possible. And then Robert and I even got to join another band in Not Of, which is a crazy name, In the World, but Not Of the World, in Not Of, on a tour of Romania.
Yeah, that was the best.
That
It
was
was so good. Oh my gosh, what a great thing for us to be able to do that. I mean, it was just after the Iron Curtain fell and all that stuff was going on with Gorbachev and tanks in the square, all that stuff. I'm sure you remember when we went into, I think it was Tushora, the city. You could
Yeah,
see all the bullet holes and stuff like that in the buildings. It was an incredible time for us to
absolutely.
be there. Yeah, they were wide open to the gospel, and it was cool, right? We would drive up, park and say, "Hey, can we plug in?" Some business would let us run an extension cord out of their thing, and then boom, we would play, and then we would give our English testimony, and I think it's Paul, right? Paul
Yeah, Paul Marison.
Marison. He would translate for us and that, and then people would accept Christ, and it was great. It was a great
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I felt very blessed to be on that trip because I wasn't officially in the band. I was just friends with the band members. And one of the guys in the band, Lance, was unable to come for some reason. I forget all the reasons, but some crisis going on back home. So he asked if I just fill in, and I helped to run the sound, and I even plugged in a microphone to the soundboard and sang harmonies from wherever I was standing.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right. And then you had that trumpet, right? Some kid gave you a trumpet or whatever, and you were playing along. It was awesome. I think my favorite part was trying to this is terrible, but I'm trying to trip up Paul with the with this translation by using American phrases.
right,
So I just say, "Give Jesus a shot." He's like, "Look at us." Like, how am I supposed to translate that? You
right.
know?
Yeah, thanks a
So,
lot, Americans. Yeah.
oh man, it was such a good time.
I remember
Uh,
us being in the airport in London, and somebody walked up to one of the band members, and we were wearing our shirts in Not Of, and said in
mhm.
broken English, "In Not Of, ooh, they're big in the States."
That's right.
Yeah,
I
big,
remember that. We're like, yes, we are.
huge. Yeah, yeah. The only people that
Uh,
really knew about us was the 4 of us and our spouses and a few friends from college at the time. Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, it's hysterical, man. It was great. It was great times. I cherish those memories for sure.
Yeah.
Even so, Lori and I talk about it every once in a while because it was so remarkable. I mean, basically, Paul heard us practicing in the basement of Lance's church, and
Right.
he came down and said, "Will you go to Romania with me? My country is finally open, and I want to share the gospel with people. And if you guys will play, you'll draw the crowd, and then I'll share the gospel." And we, like, okay, so we did. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, Romania had been closed to any sort of religion for generations.
Right.
And so the fact that it was open and we were one of the first groups to be able to tour and play gospel music openly, it, like you said, it didn't matter where we plugged in, it would draw a crowd because it was a novelty. It was American music.
Right.
Gave us a platform everywhere we stood and played to share our love for Jesus and their love and Jesus' love for those people in Romania. And man, they were soaking it up. I remember being in the back of that van that was full of Bibles. They had donated Bibles for us to distribute, and the people would just throng to the van and like reached over the top of each other trying to get a copy.
Right. Trying to get the copy. That's right. I remember that. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. To back up a little bit, what's one of your earliest memories of you and I becoming friends?
I think it was you needed a drummer for chapel. I think that's what it was. And Alan Gibson, right? He was playing guitar for you and stuff. He knew that I played. I think he was on my floor in the dorm, and that's. I think that's really how we met, is through the music connection. Because I was a history poli-sci major. I mean, you and I weren't anywhere in the same classes per se,
Right.
but yeah. And I remember saying, my guitarist is that's my kid. Hey, RJ.
RJ, there's the Robert Bradford Jr. How are you, RJ?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, thanks. So so I think, so I was saying, I said, well, if Alan's playing, I'll play, So we started playing there, and I mean, I guess a side note, but I was going through a pretty hard time. My father had just died my first semester into college, and I was really struggling with that. I had just such an awful time. I was so angry and upset with God and everything like that. And your friendship to me through that period was huge, because I wasn't great to be around, because I was a little more edgy than than perhaps I needed to be, just because I was so upset and stuff. And I think I would just say I'm super grateful for how you took me in. You were my friend regardless. Occasionally you'd pat me on the head, it's going to be okay, Robert. And that type of thing. And I've been really grateful to you for a long time for that. I'm not sure you're really aware of that or not.
I knew just the surface level of the story. I didn't know all that was going on, but like you said, I needed a drummer and you were available and highly recommended. And as I look back, I can easily say with no reservations that God was handpicking us to be on that group together. There's many remarkable stories we could tell about those days. But just to think of that experience, that shared experience of rehearsing, making music together, eating, joking, shuvas, everything in between, created lasting friendships, right? Here we are decades later. And picking right up where we left off.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, super grateful. I agree. Yeah.
And many of the people who have met me before know that I grew up and was raised in Montana. So here's the irony. I'm sitting now in my backyard in Orange County, California, and Robert is in Montana. What are you doing in Montana? What are you doing in my stomping grounds?
Well, it's funny is that a college friend of my wife, like her roommate, they've been involved in this Glacier Bible camp. Her and her sister, we went to college with them. I didn't really know them. Lori knew them, and they were begging us to come. And I just didn't want to drive 20 whatever hours to do that. But finally, I told Lori, I said, "Fine, okay, we'll go once, okay, and then she can shut up because I don't really want to do this at all, And man, we got here, and just the extreme beauty of Flathead Valley and that area of Hungry Horse, etc. I mean, it's just outside of Glacier National Park, so you can imagine the beauty in that. Anyways, so that was it. This is our 16th year coming. We missed twice. One was COVID because they closed the camp, and the other was when we moved to Texas from Santa Fe. But we drove, we flew, we did whatever we did. Our kids bonded with our friends' kids here, and then we just I saw, like, as a dad, right? I saw God moving in my kids' hearts and mine, and just how much the presence of God was at this camp and the camp meetings and the speakers. And so we've been coming here. I didn't realize, it didn't dawn on me that you've probably been coming to this camp for however long you lived in Billings, right? I mean, how many years did you come here?
So Glacier Bible Camp, I have super fond memories because our youth group, even though we were in Billings, we would join the youth groups from the assemblies all over the state for both junior high and high school camp. Just a week of outrageous fun, beauty of God's nature, and some really intense spiritual times where, I mean, it was just undeniable presence of God in a very tangible, right, a physical way. You could just sense it thick. And those moments are, I mean, they don't necessarily change the trajectory of your life, although sometimes they can. But you certainly harken back to those days when you're wondering about, well, where is God now, and you start to doubt, what do I really believe and why? Well, when you've had those experiences that are so overwhelmingly powerful, it's really hard to say there is no God, because you felt him throughout your body.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's the concept of the childhood faith, right? A lot of times, we're seeing this all over the place now, right? That kids, they go off to college and their childhood faith isn't strong enough anymore to help them combat all the stuff that they're getting from their professors and other people. And hey, don't you want to do what's fun and all of that stuff, because their childhood faith isn't strong enough. And all of my kids have experienced God through this camp in a way that's undeniable for them. That bridges that gap of the childhood faith to be, no, I know God's real. I've seen God do this stuff. Mariah's, her back was healed. She had a slight curvature, scoliosis, right? Yeah. And so the guy says, hey, I'm going to pray for people. I think people are having this, blah, blah, one of those kind of things. And she prayed over everybody, and she turned and looked at me. It's the funniest thing. Because we really didn't talk about her scoliosis like being a big thing. It's just the chiropractor identified it. She looks at me and she goes, how would I know if I was healed? I said, well, typically, you experience some kind of warmth or heat sensation. She goes, well, I just felt a significant pinch in the middle of my back. So when we got back to the room, I had her scan, and your back's straight. You were healed. So things like that, that things we prayed for, words spoken over us, and I could go on and on. Okay, so you might have to stop me, but this is one story, and I'll share this one story. So I'm having this conflict between God and I, right? Which I have. I think everybody has that, right?
Sure.
So even at church, this lady, they had this prayer thing, and I went up and I was getting prayed for, and the lady says, there's something between you and God. I don't know what it is. I said, I know. I don't know what it is either. And it was just shortly before we came to camp. And so we were getting up to go to the morning service. It's like Bible study kind of time,
Yeah.
And this guy has been like sharing a little bit of a word from the Lord kind of thing. And I said, Lord, I don't know what it is. You don't seem to want to tell me, or at least I'm not willing to listen, or I don't know what it is. So you tell that guy, and he can tell me, right?
Yep.
Right?
Being real.
He did. we got in there and sat down, and we're doing the thing, and right at the end of the thing, when he was doing it, he said, someone is stealing blah 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 blah, and this is the issue, and I'm in tears.
Oh man.
So stuff
Yeah.
like that is just it's the word of our testimony that that strengthens and encourages and establishes our faith.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
been awesome.
I've often said that you can argue theology till you're blue in the face, and that rarely changes anybody's mind. But you can't argue with my experience, right? What I experienced is what I experienced, and when you experience something that you can explain in no other way that makes any sense other than the omnipotent God made Himself intimate in my life, well, that's the end of the story for me. It's transformative. I don't need any arguments. I don't need any convincing. It's a knowing, right? It goes from beyond hope and believing to just knowing, and that's what relationship is really about: knowing the other person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Several. It's easy to say that several people that raised up in church, have some faith, they go off to college, whether it's a Christian college or not. At some point, just kind of decide that it's not for me anymore. It's like I love the faith of my parents. I've got other things that are priorities now, but that is not the case with you or me. But I would just if you could name one or two things that were really probably foundational for you, that your faith has continued to be a foundation for your life and through your marriage and the ups and downs and the struggles that life inevitably brings. What would you say has been kind of that anchor for your soul?
Well, this is going to sound terrible, but I believe I'm God's favorite.
Yeah, explain that. I love that. Explain that.
I believe I'm God's favorite. I was the youngest in my house, and I was the favorite kid by my mom, mostly because my three sisters were running amok pretty badly, and my dad was an evangelist and did a tremendous amount of ministry prior to his death in '84, and I don't know how to describe it, but I always felt that God understood that we were getting left fatherless, and that He was taking over and being the father. And I witnessed so many things in my life after that time where it's just God was coming through. And even during the time that I was so disgruntled and stuff, God still blessing me and still doing things that empowered us forward in our relationship together as a married couple, as well as financially, with my job, and just, so I believe strongly, because I've witnessed all that stuff, that God truly loves me. He's truly taking care of me. And we've had our times, don't get me wrong, but the faithfulness of God has been incredible in spite of the hardships we've had to deal with. So yeah. I would say it's that.
To go back to your sentence that I feel like I'm God's favorite, I think that from God's perspective, He would probably say, you are. And so is Joe, and so is Lori, and so is. I think we're all God's favorite, and that's a wonderful way to look at God, our Father, that He sees each of us as His favorite. I just think that's a great way to look at it. That helps shape your understanding of who God is and how you relate to Him, for sure. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm going to transition a little bit. You've been telling me lately and shared a video, and I think this has started a while back, but tell me about how did you get into this ride for the light? What is it? And how has that journey unfolded for you?
Okay. So I'll try and do the short version, okay, but there's some funny story to it too. So, but good. My father-in-law bought this bike, okay, and he spent like $2,000 on this bike. And in my head, I was like, they have bikes at Walmart for $200. I can't believe you spent that much money on a bicycle. Crazy, right? So, he bought that bike, and then he bought another bike. Anyway, he was done with this bike, this $2,000 bike, and he said, "Do you want this bike?" So I was like, "Yeah, I'll take it, because then I'll sell it and use it for whatever I want, you know." But so I got the bike from him, and I got on it, I rode it, and I was like, "Oh, I understand why it's a $2,000 bike." I mean, this thing was fantastic, super light, carbon fiber, all the stuff, right? So I started riding it, and my buddy Eric Montoya in Santa Fe, he said, "Hey, there's the Santa Fe Century ride coming up. We should do it." And I'm like, "I'm not riding this thing 100 miles. Are you kidding me? I haven't even ridden it 20 miles." So, you know, this guy's out of, so I did. Okay, so we did a few short rides, and then I did the Santa Fe Century, and then he says, "Hey, there's a bike ride coming up. It's 500 miles. I said, "No." Okay. No, I am not doing that.
Nuts? Are you nuts?
Any reason I could come up with, I am not doing 500 miles on a bicycle. You're out of your mind.
Right.
That was, I think 2012 was the first year this occurred. And I didn't do it. I was like, "You're out of your mind." But I kept riding, and I was riding back and forth to work, and I started to thin up, and I started to look better. My wife was liking that.
Yeah.
So the next year, right, the next year came up, and Eric approached me again. He said, "Come on, man, you got to do it with me. We need to do this and that." And so it's a fundraiser for Speed the Light, which is a group that comes alongside of missionaries and people already in the field, right? They're struggling to keep their support and all that stuff, but then they need a vehicle, or they need a clean water well, or they need something, sound equipment, whatever. And Speed the Light comes alongside of them and provides that, right? They'll buy a vehicle. So I said, "Okay, fine, you know, I'll do it." And it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And what was crazy was the first year we rode, only 4 people came. Only 4 of us rode. After the previous year, there was a bunch of people who didn't want to do it again. So there were 4 of us that did all 500 miles. I think we had 6 people on Monday and Tuesday, and I think we raised like 14 grand or something like that. And it was also New Mexico's year of the 100-year flood. So we had 300 miles in rain, and probably 150 in a full rain, like a downpour. We were soaked. We were putting our feet into plastic bags, trying to. I mean, we were soaked. And
that was your first ride,
yeah, that was the first ride. And, I mean, Friday it was blazing hot, so it kind of thawed us out some. But yeah, literally, it was like that.
How many days is the ride?
It's 5 days, 500 miles. So we leave from the top of the state on Monday morning, like around Aztec, Bloomfield, Farmington. Maybe people recognize
what's the elevation there?
I think that area is about 6,000 feet, I think.
Okay. Yep.
We go, I mean, that's the first few days of a hard day because we're in the bottom part of the Rocky Mountains, right? So we'll cross the Continental Divide, which I think is like 7,300 feet. So there's like 5,400 feet of climb the first day.
The first day.
Yeah, the first day, and then it tapers after that. So day 2, I think, was like 2,600, and then you get to the bottom part of the state, and it's like rolly hills. It's pretty flat and all that. So yeah, it's 5 days, 500 miles, top of the state to the bottom of the state. We ride through Roswell and all that, come out at the Texas border. So it's pretty cool.
That first year, you're in a flood. You've never ridden 500 miles before. I can only imagine that you wanted to quit 100 times or more along the way. Is that true?
I told Eric on Tuesday, because this was Eric's bad idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
I told Eric, I looked at him when we got into Albuquerque. We were at this bike shop because one of the guys had a problem with his bike. I looked at him and I said, I do not want to ride in the rain. And he looked at me and he was like,
Yeah.
walked off. So yeah, there were several times. Probably day 3 was super hard for me. We were literally, Joe, it was so cold. We were so wet. And there was a point where we were going through the city, and the cars were just going by us and they were showering us, just with water. I mean, it was awful and it was cold. And, it was awful. At the same time, there's this overwhelming sense of we got to ride all these miles. We have to accomplish this task. We are raising money to impact people, so there's no quitting. So it was very hard.
Yeah.
Right? It was.
So go back to there. You're at this point where you want to quit, but you feel this compelling reason not to. And tell us a little bit more. What is that? What was the compelling reason in the ride that just kept you going, no matter how awful the conditions were?
I think I want to say it's 2 things. Number 1, I gave my word. I gave my word to everybody who gave that I was going to do all these miles. And I'm kind of big on that. If I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I don't care. And whatever it takes, I'm going to keep my word. So that was a big play for me, because I really did want to quit, but I was not going to quit. I'm not a quitter. So kind of that aspect of it.
Right.
Not a quitter. I'm not going to quit. This sucks. So I'm going to tell everybody it sucks, but I'm not going to quit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So unlike the sons, there are 2 sons, right? So the son that complains, but then he goes and does the work. Yeah, that's me.
Love it.
I mean, so it's that. But then the second thing really is the value and purpose of what we are doing and why we are doing this. We're when this started, the DYD at the time, Gerald Dickinson, he had so many missionaries on the list. They didn't have vehicles. They didn't have stuff they needed. He came up with this idea to try and fulfill the need of all these missionaries, because they just weren't getting money out of students, and that for Speed of Light.
Yeah.
So, I'm big on purpose, and this was really, really important to me to accomplish it because of my word, but also because we're trying to impact lives and change the world for the best.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's what really compels any of us to do something we don't want to do. Those are the 2 things, right? Those are the 2 most compelling things. One, I'm going to be true to myself, and the other is I'm going to have an impact that is greater than whatever pain I put in, right? The return on investment, to use a business term, is really high when you continue to see what the results will be. And tell people a little bit about what is the impact when you've raised funds, and I understand, I've heard that you're like the chief fundraiser. You've become like the passionate guy that makes sure everybody knows and everybody gives, and you are enrolling as many people as possible. But what is the outcome? What's the impact of what you guys are doing?
Yeah. So I think I've done. This will be my 9th year, and we probably there's three things. I'll tell you 3 things. So in 2015, we rode for Convoy of Hope. So Convoy of Hope, obviously disaster relief is a big thing for them, but it's Hal Donaldson and his brother Steve. So started Convoy. So Steve wanted to start this rural compassion because there's a lot of people in these villages and small towns and that they just get overlooked, even though there's huge drug problems, meth. I mean, the whole thing, it's as bad per capita, right? And so Steve wanted to do this rural compassion thing, which basically would allow a missionary in a vehicle to come into these small rural towns, bring together the city leaders, including the church leaders and the city leaders, and basically say, look, guys, you have resources. You have things that you can do to solve the drug problems and that's going on in your little town. And so they do this. The missionary comes, he does this thing, and then Convoy sends a big semi truck, and they do this huge distribution to the people in that community.
Yeah.
We bought their first vehicle. So we rode and we bought this, $35,000 whatever panel van kind of thing, one of those tall ones, like the FedEx one, right?
Yeah, the Sprinter vans.
Yeah, that. So we bought that, and the missionary that is driving that thing rode with us. He actually did the ride with us, And so we bought Rural Compassion. I think by now we bought them 5 vehicles. And then the other thing last year we did was Speed the Light is partnering with World Serve International, which is Doug Pitt's group, Brad Pitt's brother, Doug Pitt. And we put 5 clean water wells in Ethiopia with the money we raised last year. So it was a record year, right? I mentioned like the first year I rode, we raised about 14. So we raised 198,000 last year. And
in one ride.
In one ride.
Yeah.
And we had like 30 riders that time, which makes a difference. But we impacted 20,000 people. And clean water is, you're not just dealing with bloodborne pathogens and waterborne diseases and stuff like that. You're revolutionizing a community because they have access to clean water. No one's scavenging. They're, just all this stuff. So we've done a lot in that, and I'm trying to raise 20,000 this year. Because if I can get 20,000 this year, then I will have raised 100,000.
As an individual or as a group?
As an individual.
Yeah.
Oh God, this is the thing, Joe, and it's what I tell all of these guys. Like, ask people, but you need to pray. Pray about that person. Talk to God about that person. Then ask that person, and then follow up when they say yes. But if you're not praying, then you're not opening the door for God to move on people's hearts. And every time I send an email or do any of that stuff, I'm praying over that thing to make sure that I'm still God's favorite, and He's going to help me out with these people, right?
Right.
And we're going to raise as much money as we possibly can, so we can have the greatest impact.
That's right. It's all about the greatest possible impact. It's remarkable, Robert, and first of all, I just want to commend you as my friend for pushing through all of the roadblocks along the way, both the ones that were physical and the ones that are emotional and mental and spiritual, because I'm sure you faced all of these things. And so let me ask you this. Now that you've ridden, is it 6 times you've done 6 of these now?
9. This will be 9.
Yeah. So does it get any easier? Does the 500 miles trek get any easier from year to year?
Well, this is what I've learned, Joe, is that it's the time I put in ahead that makes the ride easier. So I've already ridden, I think I saw my thing, I've ridden like 1,800 miles already this year in training. And there were a couple years where I didn't ride as much, and it was a lot harder. So as long as I invest in myself, in my training, and make sure that I'm doing that when the ride comes, it's not bad. So,
that's cool. Now, we've talked about this only briefly, and I will try to flesh this out a little bit now, but as I hear you talking about riding and the mission that you're on, the impact that you're having, I can't help but think that riding, especially in a team situation like this, where you have to do all your own work individually, but then you enlist other people to come with you on this journey. To me, this seems like a pretty rich metaphor for our life, right? For the journey of life, that we have to do it individually. We have a lot of responsibility on our
Right.
own, but
Right.
but it's also much better when we enlist others along the journey as well. So
Absolutely.
have you gleaned any lessons from, as you think about it, have you gleaned any lessons from being a long distance rider, especially in these 500-mile trips, and the relationships that you made over the years, that you think is a great metaphor for how to learn to live, especially the walk of faith?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a ton of stuff. I mean, even just the simple, you got to keep pedaling.
Mm.
You can't quit. And a lot of times, when there's a hill coming out of Bloomfield called 9 Mile Hill, and it's 9 miles up, and it's brutal,
Man,
and as a cyclist, I mean, if you've seen the tour or any of that stuff, you know that there's a lot of drafting. You try and get behind somebody in drafting, so there's a huge team component and a dependence in terms of working together. We're accomplishing this together, especially what we're doing, because it's a ride. It's not a race.
yeah,
So there's that aspect of collaboration and teamwork, and you have to be smart. You can't be the one that's pulling so much. You're out front so much, then you're no good to anybody, because you get trashed, and then you get dropped off the back end because you overcommitted, because you wanted to be the man or whatever. I mean,
yeah,
so
yeah,
there's an element of humility that goes in with that, and then the other thing is shifting that. And I tell you what, there's a huge parenting application in terms of shifting. Because if for 9 Mile Hill, I mean, you try your big gears and you're trying to force your way, and I mean, you're just not going to last.
yeah,
Unless you're really trained or whatever. But I mean, you're just going to burn yourself up, and your larger muscles don't recover as quickly. So you gotta figure out, how can I go as fast as I can, as far as I can, with the least amount of effort.
mm,
And shifting gears that's a huge thing. Being able to shift. And there's been several times with my own kids where we're fighting a battle, and I can tell by the struggle that it feels like 9 Mile Hill. This just feels like this is really, and I need to shift. I gotta shift my perspective. I gotta shift how I'm dealing with this, and I've done that a bunch of times, for stuff like that, work stuff too.
yeah. Even as I listened back to how you got into this in the first place, your friend Eric said, "Come on, let's do this," and you're like, "No way!" And then he pushed you 100 miles, and then 500 miles, and now as we look at you, you're out in front of the pack, and you're teaching the others how to do it, and you're enlisting people to give and be part of the impact that you're making. But if it hadn't been for Eric back in those days, who was persistently saying, "Come on, let's do this,"
Right.
you would not have experienced any of that, right?
Right. It's absolutely true. And Eric is a great guy. You would love him. He and I planted a church together in Santa Fe, before we moved to Texas. It was his. I just helped him, but he's an incredible person, and he's like that. He wants to get everybody involved. He wants to. It's the thing, right? He wants to get a group of people moving forward, seeing past their roadblocks to what they can accomplish if they apply themselves, if they invested in themselves, and Eric's also the reason I have credentials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
He said to me, this guy, I swear, he says to me, "Have you ever felt like you had a call to pastor?" I'm like, "Shut up. Why are you bugging me?"
go it.
Go away. Why are you throwing all this stress on me? But through, he said, and that's what he did, Joe. He said, "I'm going to the School of Ministry. You can ride down with me. Here's how you sign up. I'd love to do it together with you." and because he was further, I think he was doing the license level at that point or something. But so I did. I prayed about it, and it was probably the fastest answer I've ever gotten in my life. Uh, that I should do this. My sister had been harassing me for a decade. You're called to be a pastor. You're called to be a pastor. I'm like, okay, well, if God opens the door, I'll do that. But right now, I'm not. And I've done some stuff, but I wasn't credentialed, right?
Right.
I've been a teaching director for community Bible study for 6 or 7 years, and that, but not with credentials. So my sister was very pleased.
And Eric too, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, yeah, Eric's pretty awesome.
I think of how this applies to mentoring. I think we all say and even believe that a mentor is valuable, both to have one and to be one. But this is a very tangible story about when you've got someone who believes in you and challenges you to do something beyond either what you wanted to do or you believed you could do, then you accomplish great things. And then when you get to that point, you get to turn around and grab some other people and say, hey, why don't you join me, right? And
Right.
I've said in conversations over the last, since COVID, I think some of these conversations I've had where it's dawned on me finally after all these years that there's a lot of things in life that I can do by myself, I can do alone, but I don't want to anymore, right? I was the self-contained, self-sufficient guy for all this time, and realized that that's not nearly as rewarding, as fulfilling, as enjoyable as being on the journey with brothers and sisters and friends who who can help pull me when I'm on the backside of the group and push me when I'm on the front.
Right. It's true. I think the biggest thing about the ride is the camaraderie that occurs. I don't think any of these guys, when they first started this thing, realized how it was going to bring a lot of their youth pastors together, because a lot of youth pastors were riding, and the community and collaboration that would occur. And I would overhear conversations of guys talking about problems they were having with their youth group and what did the other guy think. And when you're riding like that, you have a lot of time to talk, just riding next to somebody and how's it going, and the stories you would hear and the depth of, people's situations and all of that happening at the same time. It's just, it was huge. It was huge for me in that sense. And the mentor thing is huge. To be mentored is, if you can find somebody, that's awesome. To mentor is to invest in someone else, to empower them to achieve so much more because you're so much further ahead of them. And I wish, with my dad being gone, I pretty much did all of my, I parented myself. I didn't have a dad. I didn't have men that I could really reach out to, that I could relate to and help. So all my parenting, all the kid stuff, all the dealing with my my mother-in-law, and just all of that stuff like that, I did on my own, and it was really tough. And I wish that I had like who I am today, to be able to turn back to me and mentor and empower me all those years ago. So it's a big thing, and it helps us. It helps you as a mentor. You grow and mature, and you're mentoring somebody else, and the investment you're making. So I recruited 3 riders from Texas this year. Last year I had 4, but so I'm and they're riding with me, and we're and I'm investing in one of them's 30-ish, and he's the kid, and he's got 3 kids, and his dad's not in good shape, and it's a huge opportunity for me to invest in this kid, and to empower him and help him understand that God's on your side. Be smart, don't jump the gun, and pedaling. It's been really, really good. So I tell them all the time, you can do more than you think.
Yeah, that's a message that when it comes from somebody who you can trust, that can be transformative. When someone says, "You got a lot more in you than you think you do. You can go farther. You can go faster, right? Than you ever thought you could." And then perhaps you never would have told yourself that or believed it if you had, but it comes from the right person at the right time, and it can compel you to do remarkable things.
Right. Well, to be honest, it's scarier. It's scarier when you're on your own. Because now I'm gonna try and do this thing, and I don't have any support. I don't. Who am I gonna lean on?
Yeah.
Who am I gonna ask for help with this? So I'm gonna be a lot more tentative, and I might not do it at all because it's too scary.
Yeah.
But if I have a mentor and somebody who's walking with me, I am far more courageous because I've got somebody who's back me. I got someone who'll tell me when I don't understand what happened. To help me and move me through those things. It's a big deal.
Yeah,
it's a big
for
deal.
sure. Yeah, the one other component that you have mentioned that just dawned on me, I hadn't even thought it through before you said it, was the amount of time that you spend together on the ride allows for these much deeper, richer conversations where it's not just the surface talk, right? How you doing? Great. How are you doing? Okay, good.
Right.
And then you're on your way. But you got hours. You got nowhere else to be.
Hours.
It turns out to be where you get into conversations that really matter. You're talking about things that really matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely.
I think for some, including myself, even if I know how important a mentor can be, I'm like, where do I find one, right? I want a mentor, but it's not like there's a mentor phone book and I could just go on the internet and say, find a mentor. That would be dangerous.
Right.
But this is one of the great values of your local church can be you get into a community, right? A community of people with like-mindedness, similar faith and values. And then it's much easier in that setting to be able to identify people that, hey, I have a lot in common with you. I like where you're coming from. I see a lot of wisdom in you. And then then there's that hurdle, that roadblock, as we talked about before, of actually asking, hey, you want to hang out? Do you want to share, some of the wisdom of your experience with me? And I got to say, from my experience and from the stories I've heard, very few men, even, I would say, no, I'm not interested. You're on your own. Most of the guys, even though they're super accomplished and have done remarkable things and kind of feel like they're way beyond you, they find great value and affirmation in someone asking them for their opinion. How did you get there? What did you learn? What lessons could you share with me? And it's amazing how that's like a magnet for people because we do want to share our knowledge with others.
Right. Absolutely. I've certainly seen a lot of success in the small group arena if we can get the men's groups going enough, and you can do it well. You can get some of the older guys with the younger guys and be successful in terms of creating some relationships that way. And I mean, I've gone to men's groups in recent years, and I'm like, oh, there's nobody here for me.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, if I've seen a few that I could invest in, right? So those kinds of opportunities, you're right. I mean, we have to find like-minded in order for mentoring to really work.
Yeah. And I would say another ripe field for harvesting those type of relationships is in these type of activities, like the biking, the triathlon. I hear people say, I don't go to the triathlon for the enjoyment of of how hard the run and the ride and the swim are. I go because of the community. I get to hang out with other people they're going to accomplish a goal that they never thought they could accomplish as well. And then they just create these relationships out of, this is what some people call affinity groups, or rather than starting at a church and looking for a men's small group, you start with a group of people that do the activities that you like and that you have in common. And then, like we said, with the time spent, then you start to identify, oh, here's somebody I can really learn something from, or here's somebody I can really help along the way.
Right. Yeah, that's actually very true. There's a Plano Bike Association in Dallas area there. They they do so. There's like 200 cyclists in this group, and they have all the different rides, and I've done a bunch of those rides for training and stuff like that. And I finally said, you know, I'm going to go. They always go to this burger place after, so I'm going to go to the burger place after. And I sat with these guys, and we're talking to them. I'm like, this is good. You know, we're talking about riding and talking about this and that, and then they're sharing some of their life stuff and that. So there's some opportunity there for that kind of stuff like that. Yeah, I agree on that.
Yeah, some people would say it's how you find your tribe. It's worth searching for.
Yeah.
Find your tribe. Yeah. Well, we don't have much time left in this live cast, but I'm just so glad that we've reconnected, that we get to share these conversations. And for those that are tuning in, we have some plans in the work to do some future discussions about life and marriage and family and things that we've learned along the way, either by doing it wrong or by doing it right. Things that we've learned from mentors, but also learned the hard way, and things that God teaches us even along the way. And so I look forward to having those conversations with you as well.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. Can't wait.
So for those that have tuned in today, thank you and heard this broadcast. And I just want to encourage you again that life is like a ride. You do have to invest in yourself. You have to train and be prepared for the hardships that inevitably you'll face. Prepare your heart, your mind, your body, and your spirit, and also engage with others who are on that same journey. And you may find yourself going farther and faster and accomplishing bigger tasks and having really ultimately a bigger impact both on your own life and the lives of those around you because you did. So it's well worth the investment. And I'm only saying that as an observer. Robert says that from experience.
It's true, man. It is true.
So on behalf of Robert Bradford up there in Montana and my old stomping grounds and Joe McCarthy here in Orange County, thanks for tuning in. We look forward to talking to you again. God bless you all.